Good evening everyone. Today I will explain transfer function. The transfer function of a control system is the ratio of Laplace transform of output to that of the input while taking the initial conditions as zero. Basically, it provides a relationship between input and output of the system. For a control system, T of S generally represents the transfer function. In the figure given below, x of s and y of x represents input and output respectively, where x of s is input and y of s is output, and t of s is transfer function. So the transfer function of a system is given as Laplace transform of output upon Laplace transform of input. So transfer function is considered as an appropriate way of representing a linear time invariant system. So more in transfer function. So we know that in control system, the way in which the system behaves applying input causes a variation in output. So for any system, initially the parameters of the system are defined, and according to the need of system, the values are selected. Further, the input is selected to determine how the system is performing. So the output achieved will represent the performance of system. Thus can be explained as effect equals to output upon input, where output equals to effect of the system parameters on the provided input and output equals to input into effect. Then I will explain the procedures to calculate the transfer function of control system. In order to determine the transfer function, the steps are as follows. Firstly, the time domain equation of the system must be written after considering different required variables. Then after considering the initial conditions as zero, write the Laplace transform of the time domain equations. Now determine the input as well as output variables from the frequency domain equation, that is Laplace transform. Further, the initially considered variables must be removed, and we have to write the resultant equation in the form of input and output variables. Now the ratio of Laplace transform of output and input must be determined in order to have the transfer function of the overall system. Now the advantages of transfer function. The complex time domain equation can be converted into the simple algebraic form. Second, it provides a mathematical model of the overall system along with each system component. Third, for a known transfer function, the output response is easy to determine. Fourth, it helps to determine important parameters of the system like poles, zeros, etc. Fifth, the stability of the system can be easily analyzed using the transfer function. Sixth, it helps to relate output with input. Now, there are only two disadvantages. First, it is not applicable to non-linear system. Second, the initial conditions are not considered as the effect generated by them are neglected. Now the conclusion. In engineering, a transfer function, also known as a system function or network function of a system or component, is a mathematical function which theoretically models the system output for each possible input. They are widely used in electronics and control system. In some simple cases, this function is a two-dimensional graph of an independent scalar input versus a dependent scalar output, called a transfer curve or a characteristic curve. Transfer functions for component are used to design and analyze system assembled from components, particularly using the block diagram technique in electronics and control theory. Thanks, that's all.